When 81-year-old Harold Griggs went to buy groceries, he didn't expect to be accused, targeted, and nearly killed. All before breakfast. What really happened inside that Kroger left a city reeling. It was barely 7:45 a.m. when Harold Delmar Griggs, a retired Army sergeant, pulled his Buick into the parking lot of the Kroger on Victory Drive in Savannah, Georgia. The sky was still gray from the rain the night before, and most of the lot was empty. Harold liked it that way. Quiet. Still. No one blocking the aisles or cutting him off in line. He parked near the front, reached into the passenger seat for his folded list, and adjusted the collar of his worn green jacket. On the left chest, his Vietnam service ribbon patch had begun to fray. His cap, old and sun-faded, still bore the proud markings of the 25th Infantry Division. All he needed were eggs, milk, and his blood pressure meds. Nothing more. Inside, the store was calm. The soft squeak of wheels over tile floors and the faint beeping at the self-checkout lanes were the only real sounds. Harold nodded at a young worker stocking bananas, gave a slight wave to the janitor buffing the floor, and made his way to the dairy aisle. He moved a little slower these days. His left knee had been bothering him ever since the weather started shifting. But he never liked using the motorized carts. Stubbornness, mostly. That and pride. As he rounded the aisle, he glanced down at his list again. Eggs, milk, pick up prescription. Simple enough. At the pharmacy window, he stopped and leaned against the cart. The tech on duty, a girl in her 20s named Trinity, gave him a polite smile. "Morning, Mr. Griggs," she said. "Pharmacist's just finishing your refill. Shouldn't be long." "No rush," Harold replied. "Ain't like I got planes to catch." He chuckled softly and stepped back to wait. He hated standing still too long. It made his back tighten up. So he took a slow lap around the cereal and frozen foods, staying close, glancing at his watch. A few minutes passed. An older woman in a floral jacket walked past and gave him a strange look. He noticed it, but didn't think too hard on it. Another man, middle-aged, white, wearing a Georgia Bulldog's hoodie, watched Harold as he passed. His eyes lingered just a bit too long. Then he picked up his phone. Harold felt it in his gut. That strange shift in the air. Not fear, not even frustration. Just the cold awareness that someone was misreading him. Again, back near the pharmacy, Trinity waved him over. "All set, Mr. Griggs. Got you a 90-day refill this time so you won't have to come back as often." He smiled. "That's a blessing, child. Appreciate you." He reached for his wallet slowly. On purpose. No sudden moves, no misunderstandings. But the calm didn't last. As Harold turned to leave the pharmacy, a flash of movement caught his eye. From the far end of the produce section, a uniformed officer, tall, white, buzz-cut, walked with a strange urgency toward him, gun already drawn. It happened fast. "Hands up! Now!" Harold's body reacted before his mind had a chance to catch up. He raised both arms instinctively. Time slowed, but the officer didn't. "On the ground!" The officer barked. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Shoppers around them stopped in their tracks. A mother grabbed her child and stepped behind a shelf. A young employee at the bakery counter ducked. Harold stayed perfectly still, arms up, medication bag hanging from his right hand. "My name's Harold Griggs," he said calmly. "I'm a veteran. I didn't do anything." The officer didn't respond. His face was tight, voice trembling, not with fear, but adrenaline. "I said get on the ground. I served this country," Harold said, still not moving. "You don't need that gun pointed at me." But this wasn't going to be resolved with words. Not yet. About 10 minutes earlier, right around the time Harold was strolling past the cereal aisle, Ronnie Hasker was standing near the Redbox machine outside the store, scrolling through his phone with one hand and sipping on a large iced coffee with the other. Ronnie was 45, a regular at this Kroger, and well known among staff for making small talk that turned into long talk. White, balding, with a faded American flag sticker on the back of his F-150, Ronnie didn't like surprises. He'd just finished checking his fantasy football lineup when he walked inside and headed toward the pharmacy section. He had a tight lower back and a lifelong suspicion of strangers who didn't look like they belonged. When he spotted Harold walking slowly near the refrigerated meds section, he didn't see a grandfather or a man checking his watch. He saw someone pacing, standing near the pharmacy, wearing a bulky jacket. And that was enough for him to feel like something might be off. He turned down an aisle and dialed 911. "Yeah, hey, I'm at the Kroger on Victory," Ronnie said, speaking low. "There's a black guy by the pharmacy, kinda lingering, looks agitated, like maybe waiting for someone or something. Kinda looking around a lot, wearing a jacket with patches. Just seems out of place." The dispatcher on the other end asked for clarification. Was the man armed? Threatening anyone? Did he appear intoxicated? "No, but it's just weird, you know. Thought y'all might want to check it out." The dispatcher took the report, marked it as low priority. But the call went out over the police radio regardless, standard protocol. An officer nearby could swing by after finishing their current stop. Bradley Kern was across the street at a Waffle House finishing his shift coffee when the alert pinged through his unit's radio. He wasn't even technically on duty anymore, but he liked to hang around. Keep an eye on things, as he put it. It made him feel useful. He'd only been on the force 4 years, transferred in from a smaller county department west of Macon. Bradley wasn't a bad shot, but his record was stained. 2 excessive force complaints, both dismissed. He walked with a certain bounce in his step, like someone who needed to be respected before they were even known. He heard the dispatcher say, "Possible suspicious person, black male, military jacket," and keyed his mic. "This is Unit 184. I'm right across the street." "I'll handle it." There was a pause. The dispatcher came back with a cautious, "Copy, 184. Please confirm you're off shift." Bradley didn't respond. He was already out the door. In his mind, this wasn't about protocol. This was about stepping in before anything happened. A kind of self-declared heroism. The kind of thing you do when you're sure you're right, even when nobody asked you to show up. At the front of the store, a security guard, an older man with a limp, nodded at Bradley, assuming he was there officially. No questions asked. Bradley walked through produce fast, scanning the aisles. Then he saw Harold, near the pharmacy, holding a bag, wearing a military jacket. His hand went to his holster. He didn't ask questions. He didn't assess the situation. He pulled his Glock, raised it toward Harold, and shouted the command that would change both their lives. "Hands up, now!" Back in the bakery section, 16-year-old Reggie Malone, who worked early shifts to help his mom pay bills, stared in shock. He'd just been icing cinnamon rolls when he saw the officer raise his weapon. Reggie froze, frosting bag in hand, unable to process what he was seeing. 2 aisles over, retired nurse Yvonne Jameson had just placed a loaf of wheat bread in her cart when she heard the commotion. She turned the corner and gasped. "Harold," she whispered. She saw the officer's gun. Then she screamed, but it was only getting started, because someone had already hit record. Harold didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to. At 81, one wrong movement could cost him his life. He had seen men panic in real war zones and get shot just because they moved too fast, even by their own. The officer's voice cut through the grocery store like a blade. "Get on the ground! Hands where I can see them!" Harold stood there, hands raised, shoulders stiff, back aching from standing too long, eyes locked on the young man pointing a loaded weapon at his chest. The name tag said, Kern. The Glock shook just slightly in the officer's grip. Barely visible, but Harold noticed. That shake told him everything. This wasn't a calm professional handling a threat. This was a man under pressure, unsure of what he was doing, and dangerous because of it. "I haven't done anything," Harold said again, voice low but clear. "I'm just here to get my prescription." "I don't care! On the ground!" Shoppers began to scatter, some ducking behind shelves, others backing toward the entrance. But a few lingered, stunned by what was happening. Most of them had seen Harold shop there every Sunday morning for the last decade. Yvonne Jameson moved closer, gripping the front of her cart with white knuckles. "That's Harold Griggs!" she shouted at the officer. "He's a veteran! Everyone here knows him!" Officer Kern kept his weapon pointed. His voice cracked slightly, but his feet didn't move. "Ma'am, stay back!" Harold's eyes flicked toward Yvonne. "Don't get involved, Yvonne. You know how this goes." She didn't listen. "I was a trauma nurse for 22 years, she said, stepping forward, ignoring the cart now. "And I've seen what happens when men with guns make assumptions. You're about to do something you'll regret the rest of your life, son." "I said back up!" Another voice, younger and shaky, chimed in. It was Reggie Malone, standing behind a cookie display with his phone held high. "I'm recording, sir. Just letting you know. I got the whole thing." Officer Kern's head jerked in Reggie's direction. "Put that phone down." "I have the right," Reggie replied, trembling but holding steady. "He didn't do anything." More phones were out now. A woman in yoga pants stood frozen by the frozen peas, live streaming on Facebook. A father holding a toddler whispered into his phone as he stepped toward the dairy aisle for cover. "Get on the ground," Kern repeated, but this time it lacked the same punch. Something was changing. The power was shifting. His command no longer filled the room like it did 30 seconds ago. Harold lowered his hands slightly, not enough to be threatening, but just enough to speak more freely. "Young man," he said to the officer, calm and centered, "I've fought for this country. Twice. I buried friends who didn't make it back. I carried a rifle before your mama even thought about having kids. You think I came here this morning to cause trouble over a bottle of pills and a carton of eggs?" Kern's lips tightened, like he didn't know what to say. The world had slowed down around him, but not in the way cops are trained for. His authority was unraveling, right there in aisle 7. "I'm giving you a lawful command," he started. "And I'm giving you a moment to think," Harold interrupted. "Look around. Look real good. Ask yourself what this is really about." There was silence. A long one. Then, a voice cut through, loud and urgent. "Officer Kern, that man is a regular here. His name is Harold Griggs. He's done nothing wrong." It was Roger Davlin, the store manager, jogging up from the customer service area. Short, stocky, and red in the face, Roger held up both palms like he was trying to calm a stampede. "I just watched the security footage. He wasn't doing anything but waiting on his medication." Kern turned his eyes toward Roger. He looked overwhelmed now, confused. He glanced at Harold, then at the crowd. Dozens of eyes on him, phones up. Nothing he could say would make it disappear. "You should lower your weapon, sir," Roger added, more sternly now. "Before this gets worse." But Kern didn't lower it. Not yet. Not until one final voice rang out. The final voice that rose above the growing murmur came from near the flower stand, and it wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. "You pointing that gun at my neighbor." Everyone turned toward the speaker. It was Leonard "Lenny" Tuckson, a wiry black man in his late 60s, wearing a blue VFW jacket and carrying a shopping basket full of oranges and instant oatmeal. He didn't raise his voice, didn't move fast, but the way he stood, with his shoulders slightly turned and feet planted, spoke of someone who wasn't going anywhere. Lenny had served with Harold back in Nam, same unit. They'd been through more together than most people could imagine. He wasn't about to watch his friend get gunned down in a grocery store by a jumpy cop with a shaky grip. "I said, are you pointing that weapon at my neighbor?" he repeated, walking slowly forward. Kern looked around. His confidence had drained by now. He still had the gun up, but everything about his stance was uncertain. His feet shifted, his jaw twitched. He was surrounded, not by threat, but by truth. "You're about to shoot a man buying groceries," Lenny continued. "Over what? A phone call from someone who couldn't mind their business? You're gonna pull that trigger, ruin your life, ruin his, over a bottle of lisinopril?" Kern didn't answer. He just stood there. Lenny stepped next to Yvonne, who had her hand over her chest, trying to calm her breathing. "Harold," he said gently. "You okay, man?" Harold gave a slow nod. "Far as I can be with a gun aimed at my chest." Behind them, Reggie's phone was still recording. His hand was getting tired, but he didn't dare stop now. "I got you, Mr. Harold," he said softly. Then a new voice cut through the air, this time from the store intercom. "This is Kroger Management. All customers, please remain calm. Law enforcement is on the premises. Please stay where you are." The announcement only added to the tension. People began whispering. Some peeked over aisles, others crouched low. One woman in her 50s was crying softly near the deli. In the middle of it all, Kern's hands started to lower, not all the way, but enough. Roger, the store manager, stepped closer, slowly. "I'm asking you," he said, "not as a cop, but as a man. Please lower the weapon." Kern didn't say anything. His eyes darted between Harold and the bystanders. "I got kids watching this on their phones right now," Roger added. "This is going to follow you home, man. Put it down." There was a pause, a long one. Then Kern finally lowered the gun. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't graceful. It was slow, reluctant, like a man dragging himself out of quicksand. He didn't holster it, not yet. But the barrel was no longer pointed at Harold. The room exhaled. Yvonne stepped forward and pulled Harold's arm gently. "Let's sit you down." "I'm fine," Harold said. "Let me pay for my eggs first." People around them chuckled softly, nervous laughter, but real. Kern stood frozen, unsure what to do next. His authority had drained out like a slow leak, and now he looked like a man who'd lost the map. The moment had escaped him, and everyone knew it. Then the front doors swung open. 2 on-duty officers entered, both younger, both with calm expressions. They took one look at the scene and instinctively slowed down. "What's going on?" the taller one asked. Roger raised his hand. "Everything's under control now. This man," he pointed at Harold, "was misidentified, that's all." The officers approached Kern carefully. "You're off shift, right?" one of them asked. Kern nodded, finally speaking for the first time in several minutes. "I thought he was... Someone called it in. I thought he was acting suspicious." "He was picking up meds," said Yvonne. "That's not suspicious. That's called living." One of the new officers gently touched Kern's arm. "Let's step outside." Kern glanced at Harold again. For the first time, there was something resembling shame in his eyes. Not enough, but something. He followed the officers out the front door, but the damage was already done, and the internet doesn't wait. By the time the front doors closed behind Officer Kern, at least 7 different phone videos had captured the entire standoff, from different angles, different voices, and with different reactions. One of the clearest was Reggie's. He uploaded it the moment Kern walked out, without saying a word. The caption was simple. He just wanted his medication. Within minutes, the video was reposted on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Comments exploded. People recognized Harold immediately. Many had seen him on Sundays at the nearby Mount Olive Baptist Church, or tending to his tomato plants in front of his modest yellow house just off Skidaway Road. Inside the store, things slowly returned to motion. Not normal, but motion. Harold remained by the pharmacy, standing straighter than he had in years, with Yvonne and Lenny on either side of him. The tension was still thick, but it had shifted, no longer focused on him, but swirling outward, filling every phone notification, every hushed conversation, every glance between strangers who just witnessed something raw. "Are you sure you're all right?" Yvonne asked him again. Harold gave a short nod. "Don't worry about me. I've seen worse in a jungle." She tried to smile, but it wavered. Store manager Roger stepped forward, holding out a receipt and a small brown paper bag with Harold's prescription inside. "No charge today, Mr. Griggs," he said softly. "I'll cover it." Harold shook his head, gently pushing the bag back. "I don't need charity, Roger. Just fairness." Roger hesitated, then simply placed the bag back in Harold's cart without a word. Lenny looked over at the crowd. "Anybody got anything else to say about my man here?" The silence said plenty. Meanwhile, outside the store, Kern stood next to his patrol car with the 2 on-duty officers. He was breathing heavily, sweat visible through the back of his uniform shirt. His weapon was holstered now, his hands twitching slightly by his sides. One of the officers, Officer Caleb Murphy, took out a small notepad. "You got anything to add to the report before we submit it?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. Kern didn't respond. "You know cameras got everything, right?" Murphy added. Still nothing. Then finally, Kern muttered, "I thought he was... I didn't know." Murphy didn't reply. He just kept writing. Inside the store, Reggie stood near the end of aisle 8, watching the view count on his video jump by the thousands every few seconds. His heart was still thumping in his chest, but he felt something deeper now, like he had just witnessed history in a small, ordinary way. "People need to see this," he said aloud to no one. Back at the pharmacy, Harold sat down on a bench, his hands resting on his knees. Yvonne stayed beside him, arms crossed, still tense. Lenny stood nearby, surveying the room like a sentry. "World's changed," Harold said quietly. "But not enough. You held your ground." Lenny replied, "Dignity don't come with a price tag." Just then, Harold's flip phone rang. He pulled it from his jacket pocket and answered with a gruff, "Yeah?" It was his granddaughter, Tiana, calling from Tallahassee. "Granddad, are you okay? I just saw you on Instagram. What happened? Someone said a cop pulled a gun on you." Harold sighed. "I'm all right, baby. Just one of those mornings. I'm driving up there. Right now." "No need for all that," he said, voice gentler now. "Ain't nothing here but groceries and folks with too many opinions." "But this isn't right," she said, her voice cracking. "No," Harold agreed. "It's not." He ended the call and put the phone back in his pocket. But outside, the story had already outrun the truth, and it was only gaining speed. By noon, Harold's name was trending on Twitter. After Harold Griggs, art veteran at Gunpoint, after Kroger incident. Every platform had its own version of the video. Different angles, different people yelling in the background, but always the same terrifying moment. A gun pointed at the chest of an 81-year-old black veteran buying medicine. By lunchtime, clips had racked up over 4 million views combined. And it wasn't just the video. People started digging into the officer, the caller, the store's history, anything they could piece together. Reggie Malone's video was reposted by local news stations, then national ones. ABC picked it up by 12:40 p.m. CNN reached out to him by 1:15. By 2:00, Harold's daughter Janelle, a teacher in Augusta, was fielding phone calls she didn't know how to answer. "He didn't even do anything," she told Channel 7's news anchor, her voice cracking during a phone interview. "My daddy wears his vet jacket everywhere. Everybody knows him. He's not invisible. He's just ignored." The footage hit people hard, especially older black viewers who had lived through the Jim Crow era and had hoped their grandkids wouldn't have to carry that weight. Civil rights advocates took to social media, calling for Officer Bradley Kern's immediate termination. But not everyone saw it that way. Comment sections filled with the usual split. Some defended the officer, citing high-alert situations and suspicious behavior. Others pointed fingers at Ronnie Hasker, the man who made the original call, who had already deleted his Facebook account by that afternoon. Local journalists managed to identify Kern within hours. Photos of him smiling next to a hunting rifle from a 2021 Facebook post circulated fast, followed by screenshots of controversial posts he'd liked over the past 2 years. He hadn't said anything publicly, but that didn't stop the story from building. Meanwhile, back at the precinct, Chief Nora Delaney was trying to get ahead of the blaze. She stood at the podium in the press briefing room at 3:05 p.m., cameras rolling. "We are aware of the incident that occurred this morning involving Officer Bradley Kern. Though Officer Kern was off duty at the time, his conduct is under immediate internal review. We are committed to transparency, and we are taking this seriously." A reporter from the Savannah Gazette fired back. "Are you aware the man he pointed the gun at is a Vietnam vet? 81 years old?" "I am aware of Mr. Griggs's service," Delaney said carefully. "We are in direct contact with him and his family. No arrest was made. Why was a weapon drawn in the first place? That's what we're reviewing." Back at Kroger, the grocery store issued a statement by 4:20 p.m. on Twitter. "We stand with Mr. Harold Griggs and are thankful no one was hurt. We are reviewing store procedures to ensure this never happens again. All employees involved acted with care and professionalism." Harold hadn't seen any of it yet. He didn't use Twitter. His phone could barely hold a charge. All he knew was that when he got home, there were already 4 local news vans parked outside his house, and a neighbor had left a note on his door that read, "We're with you, Mr. Griggs." He didn't want to talk. Not yet. He just wanted a glass of water and some peace. But peace wasn't coming. Not yet. Not with the mayor's office trying to reach him, not with CNN leaving voicemails, not with the smell of fried chicken wafting from his neighbor's porch, while the entire neighborhood whispered his name like a prayer. Yvonne sat with him later that evening. She'd brought over some leftover stew and a plate of cornbread. "I didn't know this world could still do this to us," she said quietly. Harold stared at the television, where a news anchor replayed the moment his hands were in the air. He didn't blink. "We taught this country how to stand tall," he said, "and it still don't know how to see us." But the next morning, the city woke up with a decision to make, and all eyes were on the badge. At 7:08 a.m. the next morning, Savannah Police Department issued a statement on their website. "Officer Bradley Kern is no longer employed with SPD. His actions on the morning of July 8th were found to be in clear violation of department protocol and community standards." The news spread fast. Local radio hosts read the headline between commercial breaks. High school students talked about it over cafeteria pancakes. Church groups texted it around with silent prayers of relief. To some, it felt like justice, but to others, it felt like a scratch on a deeper wound. Outside Harold's house, a few reporters still loitered, but the big networks had packed up and moved on to the next breaking story. Harold didn't mind that. He wasn't interested in sound bites. He'd said all he needed to when that officer had a gun in his face. What he didn't expect was the letter. That afternoon, a courier knocked on his door. Not a package, not a reporter, just a young woman in a polo with the city's "L" stitched over her chest. She handed him a folder and offered a quiet, "From the mayor." Harold opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note from Mayor Dennis Travers. "Mr. Griggs, I watched the footage. I've read every report, and as both your mayor and your fellow citizen, I want to extend my deepest apology. What you endured should never happen to anyone, especially not a man who's given so much. We are launching a full review of how civilian reports are handled, and I hope you'll consider joining us for a town hall next week. Your voice matters. With respect, Dennis." Harold read the note twice, then placed it carefully back in the folder. "I don't want no spotlight," he mumbled. "Just want to pick up my pills without getting a barrel in my face." Still, he kept the note. Elsewhere in the city, reactions were mixed. Officer Kern's supporters, mostly tight-knit groups online, claimed the department caved under pressure. Some blamed the media. Others said Kern was doing his job, even though he hadn't been on the clock. But the videos didn't lie. Neither did the silence in Kern's own defense. Ronnie Hasker, the man who'd made the original 911 call, was interviewed outside his house by a local affiliate. Standing beside his garage with his arms crossed, he looked less sure than usual. "I didn't mean for all this," he said. "I just thought, it looked suspicious. I wasn't trying to start anything." When asked if he'd do it again, he hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe I should have minded my business." His Facebook account remained deleted. Meanwhile, Reggie Malone, still just 16, was now being called the kid who saved a veteran. A few of his classmates made a GoFundMe to buy him a better phone. The footage he took had become a key piece of public evidence, cited in multiple articles and even mentioned by the police chief herself in an interview with Channel 9. Yvonne was invited onto a panel at a local college to talk about what she witnessed. She declined politely, telling them, "I don't want to lecture. I just want people to care." And in neighborhoods across Savannah, especially in the black community, Harold's story sparked long overdue conversations. At barbershops, in church basements, on porches, and during afternoon walks, people traded stories. Some about being followed in stores, some about traffic stops that escalated for no reason, some about uncles and grandfathers who'd come back from wars only to be treated like intruders in their own country. It wasn't new. It had just been filmed. Harold's granddaughter, Tiana, arrived the next day. She brought her 2-year-old son, Jackson, with her. The boy ran through the living room, tugging at Harold's pant leg, unaware of the storm his grandfather had just stood through. "You all right, Grandad?" she asked, hugging him tight. "I'm all right," he said. "You brought diapers?" She laughed and nodded. "Yeah, and food, and maybe some peace." Harold sat back in his recliner, watching Jackson stumble around with a toy car. Peace sounds good. But peace comes slow when history keeps repeating. And Harold had one more thing to say. 3 days after the incident, the town hall took place at the Yamacraw Center on Louisville Road. The city kept it informal. Folding chairs, lemonade, and an open mic. No grand speeches, no security presence, just citizens and stories. The room was packed, not just with black residents either. There were veterans, nurses, teens, older white couples from Midtown, even a few off-duty officers sitting quietly near the back. The silence before it started felt loaded, like everyone was waiting to see who'd speak first. Harold didn't plan to say anything. He only came because Yvonne insisted. "You should speak," she'd said. "Not for them, for you." So he sat near the back, cap in hand, listening. A young mother spoke about her son being pulled over last year on the way to a college interview. A middle-aged man described getting followed every time he walks into the sporting goods store. Then the moderator, an older woman with sharp glasses and a firmer voice than you'd expect, stepped to the mic. "Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?" she asked. Silence. Then Lenny nudged Harold. Harold shook his head at first, but the room had already turned toward him. Reggie, seated nearby with his mom, made eye contact. The boy nodded. Not pushy, just encouraging. Like, "We got your back." So Harold stood. He walked slowly to the mic. No papers in hand, no speech. Just decades of memory in his bones. "Name's Harold Griggs," he said. He looked around, cleared his throat. 81 years old, served in Vietnam, twice. Spent 30 years as a welder after that. I'm a father, a grandfather, and I like chess and tomato gardening. A soft laugh moved through the room. Tension eased slightly. I've been coming to that same Kroger every week since y'all built it. Never caused a problem. Never needed a favor. I go in, get what I need, pay for it, and leave. He paused. Except this week, I got told that standing still made me dangerous. The room got quiet again. I didn't yell. Didn't cuss. Didn't reach for nothing. I just stood there and listened to a man with a badge tell me that my presence was a threat. And I'm telling y'all now, I didn't survive jungle warfare, bury my friends, raise a daughter by myself, and outlive 2 strokes just to get stared down by a boy with a badge who couldn't read the room. A few people clapped. Others just sat with tears quietly building behind their eyes. Harold looked directly at the officers in the back row. I ain't mad at you all. I'm mad at the silence. The silence that lets people walk through this world thinking they got to report somebody just for existing. He tapped the mic gently, as if reminding himself it was still on. I'm not asking for pity, or handouts. I don't need a medal. I already got 2. I'm asking for some damn common sense. I'm asking for people to stop reaching for fear every time they see somebody who looks like me. A woman stood and clapped. Then another. And soon half the room was on their feet. Harold didn't linger. He stepped down, walked back to his seat, and took a slow breath. Yvonne whispered, "That was more than enough." He didn't smile. He just gave her a look. Steady, tired, but sure. At the end of the town hall, the mayor stood and thanked everyone. Promised policy reviews, promised more training, promised community forums. But the loudest promise came from the room itself, from the way people looked each other in the eye afterward. Not all the problems were gone, but something had been said that couldn't be unsaid. But before the story could rest, the city had one more move to make. 2 weeks after the incident, Savannah City Council held a closed session. By that point, the footage of Harold standing with his hands up had already been played in courtrooms and classrooms alike. Local high schools included it in their discussions on civic responsibility. A state senator had even referenced it in a police accountability proposal. The council voted unanimously to pass a new measure named the Griggs Protocol that required all incoming 911 calls involving suspicious behavior without a direct threat to be triaged with additional questions. Officers would no longer be allowed to respond to non-urgent suspicion-based calls unless cleared by a supervisor. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was a start. Harold didn't attend the vote. He watched it on his granddaughter's iPad from the living room, sitting beside Jackson, who was eating applesauce with more on his face than in his mouth. When the council announced the vote had passed, Harold simply said, "Good, let's see if it sticks." He didn't smile, but his fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. Across the city, Kroger added new signs at store entrances. "Respect is non-negotiable. We honor all veterans. We serve all customers." The company also invited Harold and Lenny to speak privately with corporate leadership. They accepted, not for publicity, but to look the people in charge in the eye and remind them who their regulars really were. As for Officer Bradley Kern, he was gone. His house was listed for sale the following week. Neighbors said they hadn't seen him since the firing. Some reports claimed he'd moved north to stay with a cousin, maybe looking to restart his life somewhere people didn't recognize his face. The department released no further statements. Reggie Malone, the teen who filmed everything, was now being called the kid who kept his head. He'd received a scholarship offer from a local film institute in Atlanta, but Reggie told his principal he wasn't interested in becoming famous. "I just didn't want Mr. Harold to end up on the ground," he said in an interview. That's all. Yvonne continued her volunteer work at the community clinic and became a quiet voice of calm during tense community meetings. She never claimed to be an activist. She just showed up. Every time, every place, someone needed reminding of what they'd seen with their own eyes. Lenny stayed close to Harold. They played chess in the park every Thursday and swapped old war stories nobody else wanted to hear. Sometimes they sat in silence, just watching people come and go. "I used to think our generation had seen the worst of it," Lenny said one day. Harold looked out at the kids playing by the swing set. "Maybe we just learned how to keep breathing while it happens." Harold's house was quieter these days. Tiana had gone back to Tallahassee, and Jackson's toy cars were no longer scattered across the carpet. But the calm didn't feel empty. It felt earned. One afternoon, Harold opened his mailbox and found a small envelope with no return address. Inside was a single handwritten note. "Thank you for standing still. Some of us needed to see that. A stranger who's trying to do better." He placed it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a tomato. That evening, he sat on the porch with a folded newspaper in his lap and watched the sun slip below the horizon. No cameras, no reporters, just him, his tea, and the wind in the trees. Sometimes the world doesn't apologize. Sometimes it doesn't even look back. But sometimes it listens, just long enough to learn something. But before Harold closed this chapter, he had one final message to leave behind. A week later, Harold found himself back at Kroger. Same parking spot, same cart with the squeaky front wheel, same faded veteran's jacket. He didn't tell anyone he was going. He didn't need company or applause. He just wanted eggs, milk, and oatmeal. This time, there were no stares, no sideways glances, no officer waiting near the onions. Trinity at the pharmacy waved when she saw him. "Good morning, Mr. Griggs. Blood pressure meds are ready. 90 days, just how you like it." He smiled. "Appreciate you, child." As he waited at checkout, a man in his early 40s stepped into line behind him. White, ball cap, slight southern accent. He looked nervous. "Excuse me, sir," he said softly. Were you the gentleman from the video?" Harold turned toward him, not harsh, just direct. "I was." The man shifted, uncomfortable but trying. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not because I did anything, but because I never say anything when it happens. I've seen stuff like that before. I just kept walking. Didn't feel like it was mine to fix." Harold studied him for a second. Not to judge, just to look. "You speaking now, aren't you?" The man nodded. "Well," Harold said. "Start there. Don't stop." They both paid. Nothing dramatic, no applause, just two men walking out the same automatic doors back into the same sun. Later that night, Harold sat at his kitchen table with an open notebook and a cup of black tea. He wrote slowly, like he was writing for someone who might read it years from now. "We are not dangerous because we exist. We are not suspicious because we wait. We are not threats because we look tired or old or different. Some people see fear in our presence. Some people see nothing at all. But I hope more people learn to see the man in front of them, not the story in their head." He closed the notebook and leaned back in his chair. Outside, a dog barked in the distance. Wind stirred the trees just beyond the window. The next morning, Harold went for a walk. He passed the barber shop, the post office, the small gas station that still used handwritten price signs. He waved at a group of kids riding bikes. One of them called out, "Hey, Mr. Griggs!" With a grin. He waved back. That was enough. Harold didn't need the mayor's apology. He didn't need the internet's attention. What he needed, what every man like him needed, was the truth to stand tall without trembling. For the silence to finally crack. And maybe, just maybe, for the next old man reaching for his medicine not to be mistaken for something dangerous. Because no one should have to survive war just to feel hunted in the cereal aisle. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your grandfather, your neighbor, your father, or even yourself, don't just move on. Talk about it, share it, reflect on it, and please subscribe for more stories that matter.